Welcome to the Surrender Spectrum, in tune with Travis Anthony Johnson. So today we're going to explore the concept of addiction as an allergy, but not just any allergy. This is an allergy with allure, like a paradox that overrides common sense and distorts reality. We'll look at how addiction manifests as a cunning disguise, masking spiritual voids and deepening them over time. This reflection will draw parallels between drowning and addiction, illustrating how the allure can pull us under until we're gasping for air. So let's dive in. Imagine being allergic to peanuts, let's say. It's simple. You eat a peanut, you have a reaction, you avoid the peanuts, right? That's what any smart person would do. The common sense guides you to steer clear of what harms you. But addiction is not that simple. With addiction, we know that one is too many, just like the peanut. But the only difference is that 1,000 is never enough. The allure is what overrides our common sense. It's what keeps us reaching for that first one, knowing full well that we can't stop once we start. But the problem is we can't stop starting, right? As I've said in other episodes, in this way, addiction is an allergy that develops over time. The manifestation is gradual, not immediate, like a peanut allergy. It's not like taking a bite of a peanut and instantly realizing you're allergic. No, I mean, it is, and it isn't. And I'll dive into what I mean by that. The allure keeps us coming back, even as the allergy deepens, even as we start drowning in it. If addiction is an allergy that overrides common sense, then what is it really masking? It's a spiritual dilemma that disguises itself in 1,000 forms of fear. These fears create voids, like they create spaces within us that crave something to fill them. At first, the substance seems to work. Well, I mean that's why we do it, right? It makes us feel alive for the first time in our lives, and that's why we keep utilizing that substance. It makes life fun for what feels like the first time. It makes us feel like we're catching up to the world around us. It makes us almost feel like we've arrived to life finally. But as time goes on, the substance stops working and the void deepens. We become desperate, like chasing that original feeling, that illusion of arrival. We search for substitutes, often stronger and more dangerous substances, to fill these ever widening voids. This is the cunning nature of addiction. It fills the void while simultaneously making it deeper. And in that deepening, we begin to drown, essentially. So, like, picture yourself in the middle of a vast ocean. The waves are crashing, the water is pulling you under, you're drowning. In that moment, survival is all you can think about. But when we're drowning in addiction, we're not just fighting to stay afloat, we're exhausting ourselves trying to reach that first high again. We keep grasping at the memory of that first euphoric feeling, the illusion of arrival. But it's completely out of reach every time, and it becomes more and more so. The more we chase it, the more we wear ourselves down. The more we try to swim, the weaker we get. And this is how addiction pulls us under. We begin living too fast, seeking immediate gratification, dying quicker. The allure becomes a weight dragging us down, making it harder and harder to climb back up to the surface. Using drugs to escape is all fun and games until you got to escape the drugs. I remember reading that somewhere. I think it popped up on my Facebook or something like that, and it really struck something in me that decided to kind of go deeper into this, and because it's the essence of drowning in addiction. The very thing we use to escape reality becomes the very thing we must now escape to survive. Unlike a peanut allergy, which is what I was saying before, it is and it isn't. The peanut allergy, where the reaction is immediate and unmistakable, addiction is insidious. It develops over time, creeping up on us, disguising itself as a solution to our spiritual voids. It starts out as a friend almost, like, a party, a celebration, a way to feel alive. But over time, it reveals itself as a cunning enemy, systematically dismantling our mental, emotional, and physical health. This is why addiction is so dangerous. We don't sense the danger until we're already drowning, and that's the difference between the peanut, right? Like, you take the peanut and you know right away that it's dangerous, but addiction is that cunning friend at first, that it feels like it's there to support you, and then before you know it, it's the thing that's killing you. um we don't realize we're allergic until the voids are deeper, the allure is stronger, and the substance has become a necessity just to feel normal. And in that desperation, we keep reaching for more, chasing the illusion of arrival, and drowning in the very substance we thought would keep us afloat. The final layer of addiction is the mental obsession, the cunning disguise. Addiction convinces us that it's the solution to our depression, our anxiety, our spiritual voids. It convinces us that we just have one more, or it convinces us that if we just have one more, we'll feel better. But it's a lie. The substance is a counterfeit solution that deepens the void it promises to fill. And this is the cunning nature of addiction. It masquerades as a friend while slowly killing us. It keeps us reaching for that first high, that first feeling of arrival, while robbing us of our ability to experience true joy, true connection, true spiritual fulfillment. I mean, and this goes into, what it does to our, our dopamine and our serotonin. It just fires it through the roof, so that when we're, off the drugs or alcohol, like, we're so depleted in our natural, you know, dopamine and serotonin, that we just don't feel like we're a part of anything. We just feel like we're just struggling and trying to stay afloat. And that's what keeps, the allure working, right? Like, we keep searching for that blood, like that surge of, good feeling, and the motivation to just be alive. Um, Addiction, it's not just an allergy. It's an allergy with allure. It's a cunning, insidious force that overrides common sense. It deepens spiritual voids and drags us under until we're gasping for air. But recognizing this cunning disguise is the first step in reclaiming our power, which is why we need to, just be honest with ourselves. Like, step one is essentially about honesty, right? We have to be honest that we are drowning in that, and that the thing that was helping us is no longer helping us, but we use it as a power source to get by, to believe in, and it was making our lives completely unmanageable. And so, if you're struggling, and you identify with these issues, like identification is essentially, you know, your innermost self trying to be honest with you, right? And even though we have this ego that wants to keep us away from getting help and just coming up with these excuses to keep us in our comfort zone so that we can keep going back to the thing that we think helps when it's actually not helping at all, and it's making things worse due to that allure and the override of common sense. Just hold on to that idea that maybe you do actually identify in what I'm saying, and you can actually just make a start. So today, let's reflect on the voids we've been trying to fill. Let's reflect on the allure that keeps us chasing that first feeling of arrival. Let's remember that freedom doesn't come from counterfeit solution. It comes from facing the voids head on, surrendering to a higher power. Excuse me. You know what it is. This is the surrender spectrum. Every once in a while, like a burp comes up, and you know what? Forgive me for that. Oh Lord. Yeah. It essentially. I see. You know what? The burp threw me off. Now, it threw me off. But let's just try to remember that real freedom doesn't come from this counterfeit solution. It comes from facing the voids, as I was saying. Surrendering to a higher power and choosing life over illusion, one breath, one stroke, one step at a time. If the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us anything, it's that these suggested steps, the 12 steps, do and have worked for those that authored the book and the stories. So if we have faith in our higher power, then we should believe that if we follow these suggestions, that we too will recover. It's about, it's like this book I got. Let me pull it up here after I drop it. So the book about manifestation, and it's called The Secret, by Rhonda Byrne. I actually have the Secret Gratitude book, and what it talks about is it's a journal, but it asks you to do these things first before you start writing in it. But essentially, it's about manifesting through gratitude. So basically what we do is we write everything in present tense. So on the first page, it's about the present time, and we write everything that we're grateful for in this moment. So I would say, like, I'm truly grateful, for my mother, always having unconditional love for me, or I'm truly grateful for my father's, his will and, or sorry, his wisdom and guidance for me, and and the gratitude will always just kind of put it out in the universe that you manifest more of these things to come forward to you. But the other page is like a future gratitude list, which is more about the manifestation, but it's still in present tense. So like if I want this company that I've been building to be successful, I would say I'm truly grateful for the success of my company. I would already not, I wouldn't say imagine, I would already identify it as being successful and be grateful that it already happened, so that so that the story can play into that, right? I'm already being grateful to God that these things have manifested, right? And that's kind of how I look at the steps, right? Because they're just suggestions, but um if I look at something like step 2, like I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I would choose to believe that these suggestions of the people that it worked for could work for me. So why not just be truly grateful that a power greater than myself has restored me to sanity? And then it allows me to go through these steps and manifest them to work the way that they're supposed to, and it allows me to get out of my way because I've already been grateful that they do work. And that's kind of having faith. And if we believe that we can and will recover, then this goes to show us that every aspect of our journey with our sponsor is God's gift, of our trust and faith. So the more we fight every step just requires the reminder of your faith in God, and in those that recovered following these suggested steps. So when we get to step 5, and in the last episode we were talking more about like step 4 and our inventory, and then going into step 5 and telling our sponsor or somebody that we choose to confide in and let it all out, all the way down to our core issues, while they're also going to be almost studying and helping to identify the fears and things that I didn't pick up on in my 4 steps, so that they can continue to help me grow and identify things even more so on top of the work that I've already done in my inventory. And then, having, asking God and or becoming ready in step 6 to have all these, you know, defects of character you removed, and then going to step 7 and humbly asking God to remove remove our shortcomings. And so, when we get to step 5 and feel that we want to hold back from telling our sponsor these things, just know that we're we're only keeping ourselves from the freedom that was described in the big book by those who have done the work and recovered. So as I was saying, if you're being truly grateful of of this, of the fact that these steps will work for us, right, in present tense, or they have worked for us, then we essentially need to completely follow these suggestions and give ourselves completely to our higher power and be honest with our sponsor. And I remember when I was working with my first sponsor, I was doing my fifth, and my fifth step took 11 straight hours. And I'm incredibly grateful to my sponsor for that, because that's a ridiculous amount of his time, right? And so he could tell after so long of going through everything that there was something I was holding back. And I'm not going to dive into exactly what that was, because it was very, very personal, and I don't want to identify what it was because of the relation to him. But I remember I was holding back something really dark and deep, and he could see it. He's like, "I feel like you're holding something back," and I was embarrassed to bring it up because it was an embarrassing thing that happened to me, right? And I'm glad he called me out on it, and I feel like that is, my higher power working through him to help me become free. Because who knows, like, my ego may have been trying to get me to hold these things back, because it's planning like 5 months, a year, 5 years down the line to get me to slip up and relapse, because it's trying to play my best friend, because it's a it's just, that's its cunning nature, right? It wants pure control. So once it feels that you're gaining control through surrendering to your higher power and this new way of life, it's gonna try to pretend and speak like on terms of we again. Like I would say, like when that time is coming up, like my ego is gonna say in my head, it's gonna be like, oh, like, we could do it one more time. We can have that drink, we can have that drug, like it's gonna be different this time, right? And then as soon as I use again, it's the first thing to be like, oh, you fucked up. And then I'm just like, what do you mean you? Like what happened to we? And I think I've said that exact line in one of the episodes before, but it's really important thing to talk about. And so you got to understand the cunning nature of it. And so if I'm holding something back, that's just my ego trying to keep me comfortable, right? And so my sponsor could see that I was doing that, and he called me out on it. And so, I mustered up the ability to tell him, because it was super embarrassing. And lo and behold, I told him this thing that had been super humiliating to me, and he just burst out laughing. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm like, come on. I'm like, are you for real right now? Like, that was the thing that I did not want to tell you, and you start laughing at me. He's like, dude, I don't mean to laugh, but you're not going to believe this. He's like, the exact same thing happened to me. And then we both just burst out laughing, because it just felt like, wow, our higher power brought us to this moment so that we could relate to each other, to move past this thing that could have caused me to slip up down the line. And because at first I was just like, oh, like, we just went over my resentment list and my step 4, and now we're doing step 5, and I'm confiding in this guy. And then he starts laughing at me. I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think I'm done my 4th step yet, because I just got one more resentment, and it's you going on it for laughing at me, playboy. But that's not how it was. It was exactly what I needed at the time. And so, we kind of just, we laughed at it, and it, and I think it helped him at the same time, right? Because it was probably something and I mean, I'm sure he was over it at the time, but you know, you would never think that something so embarrassing that could happen to you, or something that hurt you truly, that was caused by somebody else, could actually be a strength that you utilize one day that'll help somebody else that's been through the same thing, right? You don't think about it at the time. And that was a beautiful thing that happened between us, and I'm incredibly grateful for that moment, because I remember the feeling that I had when he called me out, because I was just like, oh, like, why is he calling me out? Like, why me? And what seems like, a bad thing, is just because we're not used to being uncomfortable. And as I said, we grow outside of our comfort zone, and I was completely uncomfortable when he said that I was holding something back, because I knew damn well I was holding something back. And I went into it thinking that, I'm going to hold back the fact that happened, and I'm going to hold back the fact that, my the way I view my sexual relations with women is it comes from a place of love and relation, because I always wanted to identify and just talk. Like, my thing was human chemistry with women. Like, I love to just talk and get to know them before, even though it could have been a Tinder date, it could have been anything, right? And with the assumption that we was going in there to be nothing but pure sexual, right? Like, for me, I like to get to know somebody, and maybe that was a sense of control, that I like to be able to help people even when I was alone, right? And so I went into it holding back these two things, and you know what? and he called me out, and it's a good thing because he knew who I was too. So he could tell, when I was trying to hide something. And for me, like when I slipped up after that, right? Because in my step 7, like that's when the miracle happened, right? Like it felt like I had all of these inner demons were removed, and all this weight was lifted off my shoulders when I went into that hour of meditation and asked God to remove all these things. And they say don't leave before the miracle happens, but it's just as detrimental, if not more, to leave after the miracle happens, because then you have all this self-knowledge of everything. Now your ego has all this knowledge to work it against you, and then make you feel like you can't have a new experience that is required to start this new life, right? And so you really have to just get it all out. And back then I didn't have this ideal of thinking in present tense of being grateful that I've already lived this clean and serene life from doing this. As a result of doing the steps, I just felt like I was going through them for the first time. And don't get me wrong, I was feeling the effects and the freedom as I was going through them, but I didn't foresee that this was gonna I didn't think that in my 7th that God was gonna remove all these things, and I was gonna feel okay for the first time in my life. That blew me away. And that's just our ego fighting, right? Like it's just, you read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you read all these stories, and if you read it, this is why your sponsor has to take you through, reading it with you, so that he could or they could break it down for you, so that your ego is not just tearing everything apart and taking what it wants and leaving the rest, right? Because that's what our ego will do when you read the book on your own. And so they help you to essentially, beat your ego down into a state of submission. And it's just, I could have never foreseen that these things would have worked for me. It just seemed like it was like these were just stories, right? Like fiction almost, right? And because we've known nothing but suffering the entire time that we've been going through this, right? Well, even when you know the the substances worked for us in the beginning, right? Like we were still suffering, we still had reasons to use it and to keep using it in to escape life, right? And that's that spiritual malady, that's these voids that we're trying to fill. And so now, with doing the gratitude book and being able to look at things in present tense and be grateful for things even before that they've happened, it allows me to look at the 12 steps a lot differently. So if we've gratefully even made it to step 5, then we can trust that we are with the right sponsor, or the right person to tell all of our character defects. This is the trudging that is the most important part, not the happy destiny. And let me go over that line to explain it to you first. In the final chapter of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, before the stories, it says, "We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny." And so, as I was saying, the trudging is the important part. It's not necessarily the happy destiny. It's the journey towards what we have faith in. Happy destiny is what is what we believe God would have for us, right? And that's like the, with the gratitude journal, right? Like, if I believe that God could restore me to sanity, then why not just be grateful that He has already done that, and allow God's play, his story to just play out for me, right? And just be the actor, and play the role that He's set aside for me, because when I directed it, I was directing myself away from all of the miracles that He had provided for me, right? And so if we trust in that happy destiny, then every step, whether perceived as good or bad, is actually the step. It's actually the steps in the right direction. The defects are the things that we learn about ourselves from. It's this is why we need God's protection and our sponsor's guidance, because our ego tries to run the show by fear, and that is the polar opposite of happy destiny, which is why it feels like we are falling down when we are drinking and using. We have to trust the process that was guided by those who recovered before us. And so if I'm just grateful of the happy destiny of my sanity being restored, then I can just get the hell out of the way and surrender to this reality, and allow for it to manifest in the correct way. And the correct way is in the way that it's described by those who have recovered from it. So, it's gratitude comes such a long way, and we could really just, we can reflect what we want for ourselves in our present moment, and God will align that for us, right? And that's the importance of this gratitude journal, right? Like, if I want something to play out, and I truly believe that it can, then I'd be truly grateful in this moment as if it's already happened. And then, the action is the writing it down, and going to God and saying thank you, and saying thank you from the heart, like not just saying thank you in your mind, like feeling it come, because we have vibrations in us, right? This is a, you know if we allow ourselves to be, you know if we can dissolve our ego enough, we can allow our minds and our bodies to to play into almost like quantum physics, right? Like, you can have the observer, be us. And and because in quantum physics, right, things, when they are like, or waveforms, will harden and manifest into matter when they're observed, right? Otherwise, they're just waves, and they're just kind of going wherever. But until something becomes observed, it tends to manifest into a particle, which essentially manifests into reality. And it goes the same way, right? Like, when we aren't paying attention, and we're just letting our ego, focus on the illusion of life, and the material world, we don't realize the power of our thoughts. And so that's how we can collapse the waveform, and to begin to manifest our thoughts into tangible, form of reality. And that's the power of not of trying to break away from our identification as just the physical human body, right? Like we need to start, and trust me, like this, I could go, I can go deep into quantum physics and the relation to spiritual, spiritual principles and stuff like that. And it won't be this episode because we're already at 35 minutes, but um, it's like science has proven that if we observe, you know, the power of our inner vibration and this and our spirit, and through gratitude to God and the universe, and just becoming an observer of our thoughts rather than rather than you know playing into that role of the ego where it's just trying to direct everything. Through gratitude we can start to manifest the life that we want for ourselves by just being present in the things that we want for our future. It's like we're just imagining the best thing that we could want for ourselves and just saying thank you for already having it. And when you observe things that way, it begins to, you know, form like form that the particle of manifestation, and transmute it into our reality. And it's really a wild thing to think about, right? Like we've always just kind of been brought up to deal with how life is, right? Like I don't know, like we're a slave to the man, like like we're just there's people in control, and we have to abide by their rules and their laws and everything. But there's much more important and stronger laws, the laws of the universe, the laws of consciousness and vibrational frequencies. Like the fact that we are all vibrating atoms, and everything is just energy, right? Like the entire universe is energy, and it's all connected that way. That if we start to look at, even like different way, like sacred geometries of the universe, we've realized that it's manifested through almost everything, like Fibonacci spirals, and how they show up in like seashells, like a nautilus seashell. Like for example, like a nautilus shell's chamber grows in a Fibonacci spiral. Like each chamber is a self-contained step of growth, symbolizing how manifestation requires space for expansion. The shell doesn't stretch; it adds harmonically, like showing us how to manifest naturally and sustainably. Same thing for like galaxies and hurricanes, like spiral galaxies like the Milky Way, and hurricanes follow the Fibonacci spiral. This shows that the spiral governs both order in vast space and turbulent motion. It's a reminder that even in chaos there is divine geometry. Or think about like DNA, biology. Like the helix structure of DNA incorporates golden ratio proportions. The number of spirals per rotation distances between like nucleotides. They all reflect Fibonacci harmonics. This suggests our very blueprint is woven from the spiral of manifestation. You could even see it in like pine cones and trees, like branches, leaves, and pine cones spiral out from the stem in Fibonacci sequences to maximize the exposure to sunlight. It's a principle of efficient divine design. The manifestation here is adaptive, intelligent, and in harmony with external forces. We're not in a loop of of the same thing when we're being the observer, and understanding the way that things are and how they can be through the power of our minds and our intentions. If you're looking at a circle dead on, it looks like a loop, right? But if you put it into a 3D perspective, it could actually essentially be a spiral, right? That's just, you couldn't see the fact that there was any depth to it, but it's actually something that's constantly moving on a different axis, right? And so, you know, changing our perspective in things is a very, very crucial part of our growth, right? And so when we live, how dare you message me at this time? Don't you know that I'm recording? I'm just kidding. So, you know, like when we begin to see things in a different way, we begin to change our perspective, right? And what seems like a loop of just being in the same thing that we're trapped in, right? Like just going to work and living just for the dollar, just to get by, and because that's how we've been bred and raised to fucking live, could actually be looked at it differently, and you're not actually in a loop of just being stuck. You're actually just looking at it the wrong way, and you can actually, there's going to be ebbs and flows, right? Like, and that's the thing that we need to watch a lot is is our highs and lows, and that's why we're trying to find more of a balance, right? So when we're ebbing and flowing, in a circle, it seems like we're just having these highs and lows, and we're just getting up and then we're crashing, and we're getting up and we're crashing, and it's tiring because it's the same thing over and over again, right? But if you look at your downfalls as lessons that cause you to progress, then that next high is basically just the next level of where you need to get to in life to grow, and and that's what causes the circle to look more like a spiral that's constantly ongoing, right? So we look at our, you know, as our, you know, our trials and tribulations as as our form of learning, right? And humans do learn from suffering. Then you don't have to feel so bad for yourself, right? And that's where our ego wants us to always be self-pitying, so that it keeps us in our comfort zone of doing the same shit over and over again. And that's what makes you look at it as in you're just in a circle of just doing the same thing over and over again, right? So, you know, a big thing is just perspective, and you know, if I perceive myself as being in a position that that the happy destiny is in my future, then I could look at the trudging as being something that I'm grateful for, right? They're all lessons, they're all forms of growth, right? And there will be highs, there will be lows, such as life, right? But we don't have to look at it in the same way as like just being trapped in a loop, right? We can actually just be moving forward as we go through the ups and downs of life, right? And and be grateful for those lows that bring us to that next level of growth, right? And breaks us out of our perception of just living in this death loop, of just getting by until we die, right? And so when we have spiritual growth, and that's why the 12 steps, which almost, to somebody who doesn't understand, they would look at the 12 steps as being just a circle, right? Like, well, once I'm done the 12 steps, then I'm done. I must be healed. That's not how it works, right? The 12 steps are, you keep doing them. You keep going over, because like in drugs, like we kept doing them. We always needed to have them, right? Regardless of the fact that we'd run out, we'd fall and feel like shit again, and we'd have that mental obsession to use again. That was the loop that we lived in, right? And we had spiritual malady that which kept us, you know, filling these voids, right? That the idea of step one is a circle that we're trapped in, and what the other 11 steps allow us to do is change our perspective and turning that loop into a spiral of progression, and and perceiving our downs as points where we learn and build ourselves up to the next level, right? So, the 12 steps aren't going to just take away all of our suffering. It's just going to allow us to learn from it and to view our lives in a different way. And it's a really, really powerful thing. I just noticed that we're at the 45 minutes, and that's where I call it. I that's where I call it, because I have people that's like they've listened to the first episode, which is 15 minutes, and it's like 40 minutes. It's like, I ain't got time for that. I'm just like, well, you got time for that, Playboy. And not only do you got time for that, but you got time for the next episode and the next one after that. And but I 1 hour, that's too much, man. So we cut it off at the 45 mark. And even though there's lots more to dive into, that just means you got to keep on coming back now, you hear? So again, as always, stay surrendered, stay in tune, and we'll talk again. Thank you. Peace out.